Okay, so welcome, Phil. I think we just went live. My name is John McConnin. I'm a real estate attorney and broker. And Phil, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Phil Mills. I'm a licensed real estate agent in California and Arizona for 20 years. I'm also a real estate investor, do a lot of flips, and I've worked with John at his brokerage for 13 years now. And
Wow.
it's been a long time, huh, buddy?
All right. And I just want to say today we're going to be talking about what could be a cataclysmic change in the real estate industry based on the NAR antitrust settlements and the Burnett case. So I'll discuss the Burnett case for today's purposes real fast, and then why don't you take it from there? So Burnett, well, the California Association of Realtors summed it up pretty well, and I talked about it in the previous file. The Burnett case basically rung up National Association of Realtors and Keller Williams for $1.78 billion. And then they said, and then I read that the judge trebled those damages. I think you've read that too, but the NAR form today said the judge could do that. So I guess they're thinking it's not official until the official judgment is recorded by the judge, perhaps. I don't know.
I noticed that too.
Okay.
Some articles say it has been, and then it doesn't appear that it's been officially, tripled yet.
Okay, so that's a lot of money. The plaintiffs also settled and already, I think because they've got this judgment, are already going to collect $20 million. They immediately filed the same class action suit nationwide. So it's out there. I don't know that they necessarily named California. I haven't read that, California defendants, but it obviously impacts the major franchises. It impacts brokers, and it may impact the realtors underneath them. So Phil, what do you think about the model as it was, the real estate model as it was, and where do you think it might be going?
Well, with this ruling, I definitely think we have some change coming our way. With properly executed as it was, I think we were talking the other day, it's a little ironic that originally, I think it was 1980, don't quote me on that, but when we first changed from sub-agency to a buyer broker, and now we're circling back, and saying that we need to go back to the old way, essentially, with a few tweaks. But I think, the big crux of the lawsuit, as far as anti-competitiveness from National Association of Realtors, monopoly, as an agent, I've definitely felt some of their decisions are a little monopolistic in the way that they control us and make us do things as real estate agents. But as far as providing the best protection for a client, when properly executed with the forms that we currently use in California and Arizona, very similar, I think that you can do a very effective job of representing both. But, there's a lot of money when they're coming after commissions in a suit like this, $1.8 billion. So the attorneys are going to spin it their way, and we're going to have to react to it. But I definitely think, what do you think, John, the changes?
Just so we know that you're not one of these people opining here because it's going to collect clicks and views, although we're not against that. How many houses have you sold in your life, not for flips, but on behalf of clients?
Over 300. I don't know the exact number, but definitely over 300. So.
And then how many flips do you think you've done? I know you did 4 with me.
Yeah, I've done when I worked for that investment group all over LA and Southern California, with those included, where they weren't ones that I owned, but I managed probably about 80, maybe 80 to 100 total. And personally myself, I've been doing my own funded for 20 years. It's what ultimately got me started in real estate.
Okay. So now I think that there's a lot of pressure on the real estate industry to come up with a new model that will, so let me look at this the cynical way. And by the way, I really like the California Association of Realtors attorneys. I've said that before. I feel like I'm paying a little too much, but they do a great job with their forms. The attorney in me likes to feel secure in the transactions and sleep at night, loves to know if I'm following those forms. And I add a few things, like I like to negotiate multiple offers far differently than the normal realtor model. But using those forms keeps me protected. They have great forms. They respond quickly. Their hotline has been good in the past. So I'm not trying to put them down. I just wish they charge. I wish they didn't charge me anything, right? So their model has recently said, I don't even know if I can show it here. I'm new to the software, so I'm not going to try. But I'm looking at their letter that came out last night, and in their model, they're saying that they still think we can offer buyers compensate. We can still co-broke and offer compensation to the buyer's agents, but we've got to disclose it very well, explain everything to our clients, and then our clients can decide if they want to put 0 up to whatever percent they want. They could do 4 into the MLS. They also have said that, and this is going to really drive, this is what's going to drive down commissions. They've also said brokers can't tell their agents that they're not allowed to put 0 in there. So if the sellers want to do it, the agents can do it, and the brokers shouldn't stop them. That automatically, it's going to be hard to talk clients, and I don't even know that you'd always want to, into offering more than, let's say, sometimes 1% might be appropriate, sometimes 3. I've had occasion where we've had occasion. I think one time we were working for a renovator who had a house right on a property line in La Jolla, but it was actually in Pacific Beach. Tremendous view, unquestionably the finest finishes, probably over improved for the price. He couldn't sell it in his normal channels. I think, were you working with me? We came in there and we offered 4%, and that property closed at a price he wanted. So why? Because we went to the Realtor Association. We explained we love the Realtors. We explained why we're offering 4%, because we wanted a strong realtor whose clients would believe them when they talked about value, could assess all the other properties in the area, and why this property, because it was finished like a La Jolla property and was 300 feet from the La Jolla line, deserved a slightly higher price than the typical appraiser might come in and put it. And I even think, who knows, maybe we're saying you're also going to need a strong buyer who doesn't need to get a loan for 80% on the property. But anyway, it happened. We watched that realtor keep that, buyers get nervous. We watched that agent keep that buyer's feet in there, because in the end, an agent's supposed to, if someone wants to buy a house, an agent show up and buy the house unless they have a really, a reason not to. And
that, I think, John, if I remember correctly, I think that was in 2018 when we were seeing rates just tick up. At that time, what was high was into the 5s, and we felt just a little slowdown. And it's really easy to sit back over the last 10 years in most markets, but certainly since COVID, and look at a market like this and say, what do I need to pay anyone else for? I can sell my house myself. I'm not going to argue with you. We've employed that strategy with family members, and I know John sold his brother's house just without offering co-broke, and I've done it the same on my own listings. There are times when you definitely don't need to. So I think the other piece that these rule changes bring into the conversation is that technology does make a difference. A very long time ago, back when those other lawsuits came around in the 80s, they used to have the MLS book, and you'd get your hidden book on Friday, and you'd flip through it, and the unsavory realtors would find the houses they wanted to buy and show it to the public the next week. Things have changed, with sites like.
Oh, you're saying realtors self-deal and scooped up the best houses themselves.
Yes, and we still deal with self-dealing. And
sure. Well, I mean, you're an investor. If you see a great property, are you going to show your clients first, or maybe consider buying it yourself?
I mean, I am on both sides of the fence. So, and I have worked with lots of clients, but when I'm working to find a deal, I know to reach out directly to the listing agent. I know how to talk to them. I know how to let them double side the transaction, make more money. I see a benefit to that. So I see it all. And I think, these new changes are going to help address some of that. But, part of the conflict where I was starting with.
What are the changes? Tell us what you read, what you sent me a link to the New York. If you read it, I read it.
Yeah, in New York, I did.
New York right now, the way they've split is very interesting to me. So
yeah, they jumped out ahead of this in October, so just before the trial, and they made a change with their MLS where they will not allow a real estate agent to pay a buyer broker commission. Yeah, so for non-real estate people out there, when you typically pay a listing agent, if you negotiate a commission, if it's 5%, 6%, 4%. Typically, they will split that in some fashion, however their office works, with a buyer agent. But it will actually be paid, in my case, to the broker, John, who would then pay me, and then he would pay the other broker on the buyer side. In New York, they're going to go ahead and say you can pay Phil to list your house, where you really technically pay John, but you can't pay anything to another agent who shows the house, who brings the buyer. The seller can pay that. So that's the seller to elect and the seller to pay. And I didn't see in the article, but I would assume that they're going to pay that separately on the HUD out of their proceeds.
I
but
think it
that
said
way
that.
they're
Yeah.
getting this separation that there's no way to say we price fixed or we made them do that. They elected to pay with their own money directly to that buyer. So I think that's probably what they're attempting to get around, John, which
Yes.
this
Oh, for
lawsuit
sure.
hammered.
Now,
So
is it successful? I thought that it was very interesting to me. Now, I'm not licensed in New York. My name was, my dad used to be, and he was licensed in New York. So, but I'm not. Never have been. So I'm not going to comment on the law aspect of it. But I thought that it was perfect, except for the fact that in the RLS, which I believe must be their MLS, they're still going to allow the compensation number to be in there and searchable. So in the end, and this is a lot of
no, I think they said that it wasn't searchable. That was something they wanted them to change. I don't
it's
know.
not going to be searchable.
It's not searchable because what they were actually allowed, and I think a lot of MLSs do this. An agent could filter listings based on what the commission was that they were being offered, which seems a little, a little.
Does it?
Yeah.
Come on, it's human
Right.
nature.
Right.
Phil, are you going to work for $10?
No, I guess I'm an agent I've never once thought of that, right? I've never had a client who said, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 4-car garage, whatever special needs. I find the houses that match that. I have never said, well, I want a 6% commission, so let me search that way.
Well,
and the unfortunate thing,
I have. So let me tell you the story. Okay.
I haven't done it. So
Okay,
I wouldn't know for sure if
well, I'm going to tell you, and people can judge me for it, but I'm going to tell you exactly the story. Okay, so our house doubled in Carlsbad. We loved it. It was right. I thought Reagan's tax cuts just threw all this money out here. Our house doubled in 3 years. We're rich. Let's go to Florida because my parents were retiring and they had already retired. They were going to move to Florida too, and we had little kids. And I was like, "Well, move close to my parents. It's a cool place. Our house. We just made so much money that's tax free. Let's do it again. This is awesome." So we went to Florida, and while I was there, I passed the bar, and we had multiple properties, so I sat for the real estate license, and I got a real estate license. So at first, I was like, I don't want it. But I actually liked real estate. It was fun. So lawyers always are like, I don't want to show houses to people ever. And yes, there's no doubt there's something about sitting on our side of the desk, people coming in asking you questions. They respect you. Even if you're not being paid, they still respect it because they're in your office. And it's just so much more savory than even being at the kitchen table of a listing person. You feel like a salesman versus an authority and advisor. And so I can understand why lawyers don't want to be realtors because it flips the whole scenario in so many ways. But now I really enjoyed real estate. I thought it was fun. So I got a job. I got a job. I went in and talked to a broker called Michael Saunders. Yeah, Michael Saunders. I actually met Michael Saunders. She at the time was meeting all the agents that came to her brokerage, even though she had like 12 offices. And she said, "Okay, you can work with us. I normally don't hire new people, but we're changing. We've got a few new people, and we'll do it." And so I don't know, some point in there, I was working with a buyer coming down. He was getting relocated. I met him one weekend, showed him some houses. He came back for like a week, a month later, and he had to buy something soon. And during that period of time, prices had gone up enough that it bothered him a lot. So where he was looking for nice properties in maybe places with golf courses, he was sort of getting priced out. And he couldn't believe what was happening. He was really, really distraught. And I didn't blame him because the same thing sort of happened to me. I went down there thinking I was going to buy a lot of rental properties with the money we had, and they were going to pay for themselves, and they no longer could. And that was just like a 4-month change after trying to work. So we were going around looking at houses, and he didn't qualify for the houses he liked. And then we were driving around in a nice neighborhood, and there was a for sale by owner sign. He goes, "Oh, come on, show it to me." I'm like, "All right, whatever." And I go in there, and the lady, it was for sale by owner. She said the price, and it was literally 20% too low. My buyer recognized it immediately. I recognized it immediately. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What's wrong with this property?" But I didn't say that out loud. But it was the coolest thing. And so somehow in the conversation, I'm not saying it was because I asked the question, but it probably was me. She said that she was getting help from a friend who was a realtor in Naples. This was Lakewood Ranch, Florida, and she said, "But what are you doing here? You sound like you know what you're doing." I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, I'm not paying any real estate commissions. I'm not." I go, "Even a flat fee of like maybe I said 5,000, 2,000. I don't remember. And she goes, no, 0 commissions. I've got a friend in who's a realtor in Naples. He's helping me, and that's it. I'm working it out with him. We're not paying anything. That's why I'm for sale by owner. I was like, oh, great. But the price was still a great deal. My client walked all over the property and he knew he wanted it. So he gets back, or maybe it was even in the car, and he asked me to draw up the offer for him. And I said, excellent. I said, but she's already told us that she's not paying real estate commissions. And I questioned her a second time just so you could see it. She wasn't even willing to offer a small flat fee. I probably even said, as a lawyer, I was willing to work as a lawyer, just on a much lower basis, even though we were working as a contingency fee. And I showed you 20 properties, I'm not going to get paid. But she didn't even offer a flat fee. So I said, I will draft this offer up for you as a flat fee if it's okay with my broker. But since I'm a lawyer, I don't think she's going to have a problem with it, because I think they'll be protected from liability, and I'll do it as a lawyer if she'll let me, but I can't even guarantee that. And he goes, well, I'm not paying you a thing. Write that offer. He, in my opinion, had he been nice and pled poor mouth, maybe I would have done something. But he was whatever, the word I was going to use. It begins with a D. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, I could be bringing liability to my brokerage. If I draft this thing wrong, I'm not getting paid. If I draft it wrong, what happens? And I said, so I'm not going to do it. So he called up and complained to my new broker, right? And he got the office manager, and then she calls me in the office. It was pretty funny. It was a nice little setup. She acted like she was all upset. And she goes, and she goes, but then I said, well, if John's a smart person. He's also a lawyer. If he doesn't want to do it, there must be a reason. I stand by John. And that was great. And later, the mortgage broker told me that, first of all, the lady tried to get out of it, because when she realized that her friend had looked at 3 months ago, data, she realized she was underselling it. And then when my client, who drafted the agreements on his own, he cost himself about $7,000 or $10,000 in fees that are normally paid by the seller because they weren't in there. He had to pay them because she said no otherwise. So he would have saved $5,000 if he had hired us. But the point was, there are reasons why an agent wouldn't work for 0 or 10 or 20. And if you wanted to work for a friend, we'd have to talk about that as your broker, because there's no reason to take on unnecessary liability. At that stage,
I agree with that, but you started off saying you've searched by percentages. That story.
No. I said that's human nature. I was like, why wouldn't you? Right?
Right. No, I understand that.
If you know you're not going to work for 0, before you put effort in, don't you want to know if you're going to get paid? Because you've got liability reasons.
Definitely.
It's human nature too. You don't want to do it for free.
I've seen a lot of talk lately, just looking at other YouTube and people out there amongst realtors, and there does seem to be in the comments a lot of vitriol towards agents, and a lot of it is calling out, and I think there's like, people don't know how to react. Like, I think it's perfectly okay to say that I don't work for free. Right. I mean, and it's not price fixing. If there's some type of collusion in the way the system was set up at 6% and they push that, that's very different than just you or I doing a bunch of work and not getting paid. We don't have to work for free. And if they
let me just say, we've also helped people back in the short sale times. If people only had $1,000 worth of equity in the house, we sometimes work for $1,000 or $2,000. Right. In the right circumstances, we will work to help.
Definitely. I've sold homes for free for clients over the years, in different situations. I mean, but the way the case is getting played out in the media, it seems to be, more against agents than it is against the NAR and their rules.
Why do you think people hate agents? Why did the agents spend 2 hours to bring them up?
I'll tell you a quick story, John, because I've said it my whole career. It takes 1,400 or 1,900 hours to cut hair of training. And it takes like 40 hours of training to become a real estate agent. And that is fundamentally probably why I and many other people hate agents often. I don't think there's for as serious as a job as it can be for somebody's most expensive asset, I don't know that our barrier to entry is as difficult as it should be, but that's something for another conversation. I think but because of that, we see
how long does it take to be a licensed cosmetologist?
It's like 1,900 hours. It's a lot, right? To cut hair, right? And the joke on that story is, and I've had a lot of bad haircuts. So
I still have them.
Right.
My son spent $60 on a haircut. I was like, I can't go there, but I'm gonna have to because I'm getting this is like it takes like weeks for my hair to grow out. I'm sorry, no one needs to know that.
I'm running out too.
I have nothing but bad haircuts for a few years now.
So, but the agents, I run into bad agents all the time. I see it. I see it personally on my own deals. I see it on clients' deals. So I know it's out there. And sometimes people want to act like, oh, we have this horrible reputation for no reason. And that could be the same listing agent that you said, oh, is that the house you put on the MLS for 1 hour and made it pending and your brother bought the house for 30,000 under market? We see that all the time. Sideways deals, underhanded dealing with clients. And, it's unfortunate. One thing that I find, and you see it in every industry, no doctors, they're not all great. There's people that are bad at their jobs, but in this case, it seems like they're doing that's how they won the case, a very broad stroke of everyone. And unfortunately, that's probably not true for most people that are in the business that are serious full-time agents. But on the flip side, when we talk about the buyer broker commission, most of the part-time agents that I've seen over the years have always gotten their license just to simply buy a house to get the commission that they're their own house. And then they often do it for their brother and sister and a few deals because it is relatively, easy to do. It's a large savings or a large amount of money in one transaction. But it's the same phrase they would say about a lawyer. The most expensive one is the one you never hired, to find out later.
Oh, as a lawyer, I can't tell you. Well, we know people who, if they did stuff proactively, they might have $500,000 in their pocket right now. And instead, he may wind up with zip or massive attorney's fees. You probably know what I'm talking about right here.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get back. Because you
Right.
went over, but I think it was an important point. I personally don't think it's always like I know I can talk to lawyer friends of mine who talk about the young real estate agent who didn't finish college who's driving a BMW. They don't know that I know that half those people aren't driving the BMWs because of their real estate commissions, but nevertheless, that's what they see when they come to the listing appointment. I know when I was on my first few listing appointments in Florida, a client's son said, and I had a brand new car at the time, and the person said, oh, why are you going to make so much money that you can afford to buy this? I said, well, first of all, I just came from California. My house doubled. I made a fortune shorting NASDAQ stocks when it collapsed from 5,000 to 1,000 because I was a professional trader. And I just bought this car a month ago. I haven't had a transaction yet. I wasn't that much of a dick about it, but I was like, those cars aren't always because of realtors. Sometimes people were doing something else, are successful, and now they're doing something where they love real estate. But secondly, so yes, the commissions, as I think part of the reason the jury must have rung up Keller Williams and NAR at trial was because the owner testified that he didn't want buyer's agents negotiating against him. He couldn't believe he was paying for the buyer's agent to negotiate against him, and then that 50% of his equity went to realtors. So right. That I see there's two parts of the problem. But before I let you expand on that, I just want to say, I think the other thing you pointed out is that many, many times I've had people trying to get out of listing agreements because they didn't like the way the multiple offer negotiations were handled. And I've also had plenty of buyers call me saying that I didn't get the property and I was supposed to get the property. I think many, many, many people think realtors are always self-dealing, double-siding to get the commissions and screwing the buyer's agents. But I will say NAR keeps emphasizing lately, and probably always, you've got to tell people where the money's going, and you got to disclose, and you got to make it clear. I think there's an affirmative duty now, being that everyone's going to be probably filing class action suits, that the transactions, and I know this would help during negotiations, is that you need to explain, you have a process, and I liked this one myself, is we're not going to accept any offers until Sunday evening. Your clients have this time to make offers, and I'm also at liberty to tell you where our strongest offer is or the offers that we're considering, and I might even be at liberty to tell you where the terms are, so that the buyer's agents can communicate clearly to their buyers. And if your client's not taking the best offer because he's taking a stronger buyer Y, tell the buyers about that. Like too many agents, when you call them up, are worried that they're disclosing, they cannot disclose these facts and these information to sellers or to buyers because it violates their duties, when I think they should be telling their seller, I should disclose a lot of these things because it's going to make buyers feel the transactions better chance for them to win. And it's not really compromising you if you handle your seller that you do like well. Don't go highest and best. Don't jack up your strongest buyer 5 times just because new offers come in. Keep that person on the side. Let the other ones compete and have a fair process. And then give your favorite one a right of first refusal. I mean, it's the way Realtor's been handling this so poorly. I've gotten so many calls from Realtors screwing up multiple offers. And by the way, NAR also asked me to train Realtors on multiple offers at one of the conventions once. I do think there needs to be Realtors need to be taught, especially the new ones, how to handle multiple offers. And sellers in a multiple offer market, that's probably your biggest question. Who's representing you during these negotiations? If you don't want all 4 to walk away, all 4 buyers walk away at once, because that's also happening. That's why you get calls. So it's the process that was created in the 50s that doesn't work today. I mean, people find out the house closed immediately. Like, it's all the reasons they need to adjust. So in addition to the models that we're going to talk about buyer's compensation, we're going to let you talk about right now, I think the model itself needs to be improved. But anyway, go, Phil. What do you think about California's way of looking like they're handling buyers agents commissions? What do you think about New York's way? And where do you think it's going to shake out? How many realtors will actually be in it?
I think the buyer's commission as we know it today is already gone. I think it's, it's going to phase in, but I don't think that's going to be surviving these challenges and just the way that NAR's starting to look at it and DOJ may look at it. So the change is inevitable, but I think, the ultimate as a seller, I certainly understand times when I would want to absolutely want to offer a payment to a buyer's agent or to anybody that brings me a buyer, and that's something that I was thinking about that New York case. If they allow the seller to pay directly to a buyer, as a broker, we could never pay a non-realtor, but really, why would I care when I'm selling a property that I've renovated and I have it up on the market? If some non-agent brings somebody from down, oh my gosh, I have to bring my cousin, I'll bring them right over. They pitch me in a way that I'll present this person to you. Why shouldn't I be able to compensate them directly? And, that may be something.
Is that called bird dogging?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I absolutely, I use it when I buy. Like if somebody brings me a deal, however it comes to me, I'm happy to compensate somebody for doing the work. If it's an off-market deal that has a reason, and they bring it to me, I make sure they get paid.
But you also know why those why RESPA became so strong, that went into the license transaction with mortgages that are done by federal entities or federally licensed entities. We know why RESPA had to get involved too, right? And
that was a question, John, for you that I don't know, like in New York, I don't know that I know enough about it, but is there any potential, I mean, I would assume not that they were past it, but violation of the seller making a payment, as long as it's on the settlement statement?
Okay, so because I was aware, before I went to Florida, I lived in Carlsbad House there, and a house sold around the corner from me around the same time because it was near a friend of mine's house, and I guess it sold like 2 or 3 times. They kept jacking up the price, and agents kept taking pieces out, and then it was gone, and they had referral fees, and the lenders were I don't remember all the details obviously, but RESPA came about and said you can't be paying kickbacks to buyers to buy your property, because let's say it's $1 million home. If you let a buyer come in and let's say you're selling for $1 million, but it's only worth 600,000. You're like, you come in here, you sign on this contract, you get $800,000 loan, and we split 100,000 or whatever those numbers worked out. The delta, you split the delta 50-50. All of a sudden, the banks lent $1 million on an $800,000 property, and 2 people made $100,000, and someone took a default for $100,000. Rest was like, we got to stop doing that. Did I explain that well enough? Because I could get more detailed if necessary, because I remember it now.
I followed you.
Okay, so the point was, you can't pay buyers directly out of your commission selling the homes if someone's getting a loan, because it could compromise the value of the security. It basically, you're saying they secured a property for $1 million that might only be worth $800,000. So when you kick back money to the buyer, you are compromising the value of the security held by the bank, or the mortgage the bank would hold against.
And that's what I was alluding with my, like, do you think that, is there a chance that a court could look at that in New York and say
Yes.
that the
Yes.
seller paid? Okay.
If the buyer is agreeing to split commissions with the buyer, that's going
But
to
what
be.
if it's the buyer's agent? Then it doesn't matter. If it just
Well, if the
just
buyer's agent is saying whatever compensation I get from the MLS, I'm going to give you half, but it
but
came directly from
there is no MLS compensation in New York, so they're getting it
no,
from the
no. I'm
seller.
pretty sure it said yes. Oh, let's go see that.
I think it said the seller pays.
Yes, seller pays, but it's going to be listed on the RLS. So they're going to say buyer's agent gets 3% directly from the seller. I think is the model that they're
Right,
going
from the seller. That's
from
what
the
I'm
seller.
saying. There's no conflict there with RESPA because it's going from the seller to a third party, not to the buyer.
From the seller to the buyer's agent. And a lot of buyer's agents would say, I'll split my commissions with you 50-50.
Right. That's certainly something, or a Redfin model like that.
Yeah, I think that hurts significantly the Redfin model.
Mhm.
Although I guess they could say, we'll just reduce the final cost of the house for you.
Mhm.
So I think that could be a problem. I'll have to go back. If I'm wrong, someone in the comments when this is up on YouTube, if I'm wrong, if the RBNY it doesn't want the amount of compensation listed on the RLS, then just let me know. RLS will still be the form where okay, I found it. The RLS, presuming that's the New York's MLS,
Right.
the RLS will still be the forum where the buy-side compensation are displayed.
Okay.
And you will still be allowed to enter the buy-side compensation. However, you must make sure that the buy-side offer of compensation originates from your seller and not from you, your firm, or any broker.
Okay.
So this is now just a new theory to make it more difficult for plaintiffs' lawyers to sue an antitrust. This new theory is I am not compensating, as a broker, I'm not compensating a Coldwell Banker agent to come to the property and buy this house. I have nothing to do with it. My seller has decided that he or she is offering 2% to buyers agents to bring their buyer to the property and help the buyer through the transaction. And so therefore, this was not due to some sort of collusion to keep agent commissions high, to keep this 6%, to lock in the 5%. It's now been fractured. The theory is it's now been fractured. Sellers understand it directly. They're paying. So there's no question what the seller's doing. The seller's not going to be able to say, I didn't know I was paying the buyer's agent to negotiate against me. The seller's saying, yeah, I'm paying that buyer's agent. I don't need to. So that's one theory. It's not going to make you look as bad in a jury. And secondly, I think it does go towards, are we, if as in California, as a broker, I can't tell you there's a minimum for you to put in buyer side compensation. I as a broker, I can't keep real estate agents' compensation in the 5 or 6% range. I can only control the listing side as a broker. You can do whatever you want. Phil, your seller can do whatever they want. So consequently, I think this rule goes a long way, coupled with sellers making the offer of compensation, sellers paying the compensation, and as a broker, I can't control whether my agent puts 0, 1, 2 flat fee, 5% in there. I'm not allowed to. I think that goes a pretty good distance towards insulating or making plaintiff's class action suits be much more difficult. Now, in the end, is it really just a fiction? You're going to go in there, or not you? Some agents are going to go in there, sellers, and say you really should put 6% in here, and then they're going to hope they're going to double side it, so they're self-dealing. And then they're not. They're saying you got to put in there, and people are saying, oh, we're going to keep commissions high. Yeah, but I think that the New York rule does flip this. What do you think? I think I've already explained.
Well, yeah, I think that it does provide that layer of insulation for the problem that we're dealing with, the way that they're framing it. At the end of the day, to me as a non-lawyer, it's a lot of semantics, right? I mean,
no, you're right.
Right. The money's coming in, the buyer's buying the house. Maybe the buyer's really paying all the commissions because without their money, the sale doesn't happen. No one gets paid. So it's kind of So I understand the insulation, and I think it's good, like we've talked, to throw an attorney in there. Back when we were in a much more complicated situation with short sales everywhere, we had every client talk to an attorney. I did that. I met John because he was an attorney in California, and I was coming over here, and I had been using an attorney in Arizona. And sometimes that's probably one of. And I've worked for John for a long time, so I'm a little biased and trained probably a little more on this side of things. But a lot of things that the current rules tell agents to do, they really have no business. There's a lot of questions we can't answer. We're not attorneys.
Yeah, right. Oh, but I want to get you even more. You just brought up stuff. So what's going to, this is a delicious irony that I love this stuff. What's going to happen on the lower end market where there may be a lot of new people to the United States, where there may be people who don't have the money to hire lawyers or pay for buyers out of their pocket? What's going to happen when many homes, they can't get a buyer's agent because there's 0 or 1 or 0.5% compensation going? So even if they could get a buyer's agent, they might get a crappy one. What are they going? What are the lawyers representing that class of people going to be saying in a few years? What is going to be a period?
Lots of lawsuits. Yeah, I was joking. I mean, that's one of the unfortunate things, or maybe this is, we watch life go by with lots of unintended consequences. The scenario that somebody buys a house with no representation is disastrous.
Can be disastrous.
Can be. Right. So, I mean, without some type of, if you've done a few homes, what's going on, great. You probably have a little bit of an understanding, and you know about disclosures. If somebody's dealing with a bad actor on the selling side, whether it's just that
or the lending side, the
listing, right, lending too. It could be a seller without an agent. I see that sellers are greedy. Sellers love to put white paint over a moldy corner and say it's a brand new house. Whatever that problem that could potentially be there, you see that happen. And a buyer that doesn't know anything and has no one ask questions of is going to
doesn't have an inspector.
Right. They're going to eventually meet that attorney. And I think if you put unrepresented in general, even with agents, when you put buyers and sellers together, I think I said this to you earlier, John, if you gave me 10 buyers and sellers and had them sit down at a table, do a negotiation, ask for repairs, and try to close a deal, you'd be lucky if one closed. If one, they'd probably, most of them would blow up the deals. The amount of deceit and lying that would go on from a very motivated person to get money or a motivated person to get the house over someone else would far exceed anything that involved an attorney or a realtor. And, it leaves people at the end of the day, 6 or 7 out of those people would hire attorneys. When you say, what does that look like in 2 or 3 years? That looks like a lot of business for the people that are filing lawsuits.
Yes.
In my own career, John, we've had several fairly, important situations where the seller's hiding things. We sit down, we tell them what to do, we tell them what to disclose. They still just don't want to because they know that might mean they make $1 less.
Right.
And,
right.
Without somebody even guiding them.
I get those calls all the time because I'm a lawyer, and I've turned down multiple chances to sell fairly nice properties because first they call me up about the problem. I'm like, well, I can't sell that home for you if you're not going to tell people about it. Right. And it ranges from unpermitted garages, things across property lines, to there's others I can't. That's generic. There's other specifics I can't get into because I may be identifying people. And while I never worked for them, I'm worried about attorney-client privilege. But lots of sellers have reasons they don't want to disclose things. And the minute we don't hear that they want to disclose things, I can't. If I took the listing, now what? I can't force them to disclose, but I don't want to be a part of the listing because I already know about the defect, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really difficult. So you just can't take them. So let me get to you on this. So now this brings up two sides. So I can see why everybody would want a buyer in their transaction, a buyer to have an attorney, one to help them facilitate the closing. So someone who can answer escrow's questions. Like a background story here is I've had people have me buy multi-million-dollar homes as a lawyer. Like they don't want to pay agents. And they're like, will you help me buy the home? And I used to do it by the hour, and I stopped doing it by the hour. I will only do it on a flat fee. Because what happens is, and sometimes the escrow or title already knew me, or they know that I'm a broker and an attorney, and they start calling me about all of the many conversations agents have about inspections and lending and closing dates and financing and all those questions that, the myriad questions that happen to help close a deal. And they're calling me up, and I'm like, well, my client's paying me by the hour, and he's going to want to handle that stuff themselves. So it instantly slows down. The people on the other side think I'm not being professional because I won't even answer the question, but my client doesn't want to pay me by the hour. So I decided I only wanted to work for flat fees for people, because otherwise I wasn't representing myself well. You know what I mean? Like I was calling up and saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. They're like, well, what's wrong with you? It's only going to take 5 minutes. But if you add it all up, it was hours. There's the 21 hours it takes to close a property. Right. And so I said, I am willing to look at your real estate contract and never get on the phone, but I'm not going to help you close unless you pay me a percentage. Whatever that percentage is, that's negotiable. But the point was, I can review your contract with you if you want to buy directly from the listing agent, but I'm not going to work for a flat fee as if I were a realtor, unless it was, unless the fee was significant. So that's one thing, is that there's going to be so many screw ups. If you're offering zero in the MLS, and buyers are going to try to do it themselves, they're going to be relying on the listing agent or the transaction coordinator to get a lot of this stuff done. And did you bring it up with me, or did someone else? Think about all the liability, all that paperwork. Oh, car saying, and you always have to tell them you're not working for them, you're not working for them. So what happens when you send the HOAs over to the buyer instead of the buyer's agent? Now, what if you got the wrong HOAs? As it happened to me, a friend of mine in Florida, he got sued for $60,000 because he got the old HOAs, and the old HOAs didn't talk about the assessment that was coming from the docks in the backyard or whatever. It was a pretty high-end property. It was $60,000 lawsuit, and I don't know that they eventually paid, but I know that they were planning to pay. So all those things that when the buyer's unrepresented, when agents say they don't want to deal with without getting paid, they don't want to work for a buyer, even if they are the listing agent, there's real things going on there. So, okay, again, so let me just get to the point. I think whether you're on the listing side or the buyer side, eventually someone's going to be having to properly advise both the seller and the buyer with respect to compensation and closing the deals. So again, I think this is going to be full employment for attorneys to figure out flexible ways to work to help these transactions close. So my question to you is, what do you think about, now you're a listing agent, what are you going to talk to about the seller regarding compensation to buyers? What are you going to be doing about working with that buyer? Like, are you going to double side? And where do you see the traps going to be? So how much are you going to talk to them about their conversation about paying, how they're going to pay, and the traps if you double side?
Okay. So if I'm going in to help a seller with the listing, the first thing I'm going to do is probably have already figured out and be prepared to explain to the seller the reality of the current market that they're selling into. Is it a crazy, multiple offer type situation, no matter how high you try to list the house, like we had a few years ago? Is it getting slow? Is it, where's the market at? Where's the reality of how difficult it's going to be to sell your house? If you're selling a house, in 2022 in the spring, realtors aren't going to like my answer, but I'm going to advise my client that we probably can start with a zero in the buyer broker compensation. Maybe give them a time period to give that a try if they want to. I'll always explain the benefits to having the buyer compensation at some level, but if this is designed to make us more transparent and better agents, and from working with an attorney for 13 years, my client's best interest is to do what's best for them. If they're the lister of a property, they want to get top dollar. That includes paying as little as possible. So if they're in a market,
How about net? Let me rephrase that.
Netting,
if they want a net top dollar, because I had a client, and he's a friend of mine, and it's really funny, but he wanted to teach his previous agent a lesson about the price of his home. So his only goal, he didn't care how much he would have had to pay an agent. His only goal was to sell for more than that agent said his house would ever sell for, and he succeeded. But he might have wound up paying I don't even remember.
He might have committed one of those RESPA violations.
No. He might have let them. He might have chipped in money towards their financing or something. I forgot what it was, but he was like, "No, I'm going to sell for more than that number," and that was it.
Yeah,
because he was trying to teach someone a lesson. I was so funny. He wasn't that worried about the money, I guess, but it was pretty funny. But so anyway, so it's if they want to net higher.
So they want a net higher. So if the market allows, and we think that it's there's a lot of buyers. I mean, the reality is when we at this moment, and I say this because this lawsuit and the other ones that are going on right now could change this. But at this moment, if I then put a listing in the MLS and I put a lower compensation to a buyer's agent or a zero, it's still going to go on the MLS. It's going to hit Zillow, Redfin, Trulia. The real buyers that are out there looking, they're going to see the house. They're going to reach out and find a way to get into that house. And I can attest to being on that side sometimes when we had the multiple offer situations. You're trying to help somebody. People get real creative to get their offer in front of people. So I would rely on the market forces if they're there to help buy that. And if the seller can save some money, I think that's kind of the gist of some of this lawsuit too. They should have that option. Now, it's very possible that you're in a market that's getting a little slower and there's not only good reason to pay a buyer's agent, but you could actually sell your home for more money and more money than you're going to pay that buyer's agent in a fluid marketplace where people have an incentive. I mean, everyone is out here working, everyone has a job. John says human nature, but really it's for a huge portion of the real estate industry. It's their job, and they're not going to show a home with zero compensation, and I'm not sure how a buyer's agent, I don't really do a whole lot anymore. I mean, I've done it all over the years. I've been doing more of my own stuff, but I'm not sure how a buyer's agent is going to deal with that. That could be the next question, because I know how I would probably.
Here's the next question.
But so it's a listing agent. So if they do need, if there's a value to that, then I need to explain it. I need to make sure that seller knows why they would want to offer this. They might want to know, what other listings in their general area and their comparable houses, what are they offering? And it brings up a little point that's always bugged me about this lawsuit. And maybe it's because I'm in both Arizona and California, but California rarely do I see 6% listings. Like, we would have been a bad state to include in that because our MLS is filled with 2% co-brokes. I think it's as prices went up here dramatically over the years, it's the true free market. People started saying, hey, why would I pay you this much money to sell a $2 million house that I would pay you to sell $1 million house down the street? So that got negotiated by the market force. We largely are two, and very few agents I see with 6%, or that I see offering 3% in the MLS. It's mostly 2.5% is a good commission that's being offered. 2% is probably closer to standard anymore, especially on properties at $1 million. So when I first heard that lawsuit, and then myself, I don't want to give away my future business, but I've done a lot of 1% listings. A lot of my business has come over the years. The longer you do it, family, friends, referrals, there's always a reason to discount. And you do what you have to, but also I'm no different from that theory. 1% of $1 million listing, $10,000, sell a house in the right market. Sure, I can make that work. In the wrong market.
It's easier to work for 1% for a listing because it's going to sell most likely. Whereas working with a buyer on a $500,000 property, that might not be worth 1% probabilistically, because you could show 20 or 30 offers and still not get in the home just a year ago. Yeah.
And that also comes down to, I keep hearing the realtors say, show your value, don't just show it, create value, right? Like it's, I did a family friend, a doctor, moved to Arizona, and I educated him on the market, and he was very aggressive because he wanted a house, and that's what you needed at that time period. And he was out there, doing listening to my advice, and he got a house, at a time where I could have had another buyer that just was getting their foot wet and wasn't quite sure and wasn't experienced. And you're telling them the right things to try to get into the property they want. And they can go 6, 8 months, 12 months and not get offers. You read about those stories all the time. you know, so is that good representation? No, you know, I mean, you have to first get your clients to understand the
Are you
offer.
going to, okay, so I realize we've been on for a while. Are you going to double side? And do you need to get paid extra for double siding? And how's that going to work?
So I generally, you know, it depends on the, so in short sales, I did a lot of double siding. There was a definite reason and benefit to the seller and to the buyer, because we were kind of like fighting against the bank. Nobody
They took
gets
so
to sell the
long,
house
and
or buy.
you had to know the buyer was still there.
Right. Nobody got anything if we didn't get this done. So it was very advantageous to have everybody on the same team. And, you know, like short sales, many times we'd get to the end of that rope and the buyer would be gone. And now my seller's facing foreclosure.
The buyer's agent wouldn't tell you.
And the agent wouldn't even answer the phone, right?
Right. Cheer, he still wanted
it's like,
the,
just have your client initial this page for us, but they wouldn't even respond. So there was
screw your seller. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have done dual agency a few times, and I'm very careful when I do. I think that it can easily be done. You have to notify everybody up front, you know.
No, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So are you going to need more? Like, what if you took a list?
I think you need more. I think in this situation, you're probably going to need more. You know, it's and I really don't know in my own. So oftentimes I'm selling property I own, and I never double side those. I never represent a buyer. It's just an overwhelming conflict.
I wouldn't let you anyway, even if they.
Right.
I don't know if your Arizona broker would, but I wouldn't let you represent them.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's what it's designed to prevent, is that conflict. Now, if I'm working for a client and I've informed everybody that you guys are going to negotiate price on your own, I'm going to help you get this done. I'm kind of in the middle doing the paperwork. I'm going to answer questions, but I'm not going to share information. They all know that. Yes, it can be done, you know. But if I have a really needy seller that's leaning on me harder, does that make it harder for me to be impartial to the buyer? Yeah, that's why it's a conflict. And, you know, I think if you're going to get involved in that in this market, I want you as my broker, John.
I'm going to have more specific videos on that. I think it's going to be, people are very careful. I still haven't decided if I know there's going to be more work. I don't know whether I want to say there's 3%, 2% if I do one, 3% if I work with both sides, but I also need and out of that, $2,000 is going to a buyer, to the buyer's lawyer. I'm going to put $2,000 in there for a separate lawyer that they hire, that I have nothing to do with it. I mean, I'm very concerned about this. So my deals, if I double side, I'm probably going to make sure there's a buyer, there's another lawyer on it, maybe a different agent from a different brokerage. That might even be good enough.
You know, you bring up a good
I'm
point.
I'm not going to try to. There's no way I'm going to try to double side and be the only person involved anymore.
Right. And you did bring up another point that is just, you know,
as of now, I'm not planning to. Let me say
right. That. But also even the incentive, you know, as this shakes out, if this overall brings down real estate commissions and we stick with you know, on the list side 2 to 3%, and we don't get 5 or 6, or agents don't chase that because they're not paying a buyer. If the system, other third-party MLSs, whatever works out that way, I don't know why in the world I would take on that liability and not get paid. You know?
Okay. So how many agents do you think on average they'll be in a transaction? And let's call a lawyer 0.3 of an agent. How many lawyers and agents, average that out, do you think will be on a transaction? And what's going to happen to the large brokerages? What's going to happen to Zillow, Realtor.com, and the portals on the internet?
Well, I think the large brokerages are already in trouble. They have a giant bullseye on their back, and the you know, call them copycat lawsuits are coming. You know, I think that they are far more likely, from my experience, and I've never actually worked. Well, no, I was with Remax for years. They are far more inclined to be have internal policies to say we will not accept less than a 3% commission on one side or the other. So I think they're far more just by the scale, by their size. If you have,
I want to be clear. Did you ever hear that? I don't want you to take on liability. Remax would go crazy if they've never.
No, I'm not from Remax. From brokerages, I have seen brokerages that require a commission.
As have I. Okay, so
Right.
but not we don't want to name
No,
them
I'm
unless you
not,
know for a
I'm not
fact.
going out. And
Okay.
I'm lumping in large brokerages just by scale, by size. You know, if you're a plaintiff in a attorney in a suit like this, you know, you're going to go after the one that employs 10,000 agents.
I just said as I have been at large ones. I'm not saying I ever require it. I don't know what would require. Right? Well, we discount it all the time. I'm sure we have the proof. So keep going.
So, you know, so with the large franchises, I think that they're likely to be hunted down, you know, and I don't know what that means liability, but I think if they didn't feel they had some, we wouldn't have seen the settlements that we've already seen. And they're kind of just getting started.
Well, if they've got big overhead and they were relying on strong buyers agents commissions to carry their overhead, what do you think is going to happen there? Do you think buyers agents commissions are going to be the same as they used to be?
I don't, you know, I can't think of his name right now. The plaintiff attorney in the Burnett case, Ketchum, you know, he's been on TV lately saying that Americans are overpaying by $50 billion compared to other countries, which is half of the commission. So if he wants to see the commissions cut as a result of these lawsuits, then there's obviously going to be less money in the business.
Okay, but let's look at, I'm thinking even more simple. Screw the buyer's agents. Everybody now knows, screw the lawyers. Everybody now knows that the broker cannot force their clients to put 2 or 3% in there as a co-broke to the buyer's agents. That it's now a negotiable item. So the real estate franchises have to. The larger you are, the more you have to be sure that your people know that they can put a flexible amount in the MLS. Now, what happens when a seller says, I'm willing to pay you that 2.5%, 3%, 2%, but I only want to pay $500 to buyer's agents? I don't think as an agent, you can say, no, I won't take the listing, but I don't know that you say, we as a company refuse to take those kind of listings, because there will be people taking those listings anyway. So I'm almost positive that because it's now going to be so common and so obvious to sellers that they don't have to put in 3% or offer 2.5%, that there's going to be many sellers that say no, or let's wait a month or two before we change and offer. So I think that buyer agent commissions are going to be attempted to be cut dramatically. Now, if houses don't sell because it's a slow market, in a slow market, maybe they'll come back up. But if we ever get to a big market again and this stuff's still in the news, commissions will collapse. That would be my prediction.
I predict that the buyer's agent commission will largely slip away, you know, and that's where I think it's important in your own business, whether you're deciding to double side transactions, get a lawyer involved. I think you can't just be a listing agent and not be conscious of what the buyers are doing, or else you're just opening yourself up to some liability.
Okay, so how many agents? Okay, my theory is that we're moving to the one agent model, the listing agent most of the time. Sometimes a buyer's agent will bird dog properties and say, I'll help you sell it. But I think we're moving to like a 1.3 agent model, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I could definitely see a situation with, to your next point that you were talking about, the Zillows, the Redfins, whoever Google might have their own, who knows? I can see large scale technology with a system like Zillow saying, hey guys, we'll do your entire find a house you like, let us know. We'll do the entire transaction for 1%. Concierge
I think
service.
they have to. Why do you think they have to do that?
Well, in their model, so they have a couple things to overcome. One is without the realtor putting in which is why maybe the buyer broker is the target. Without the listing agent listing the home, Zillow has no data, right? So at this moment, all those things go through the MLS. So they have to keep that alive until they can find a way to, or possibly open it up to where we could put listings directly in there in the event that NAR goes away. But when you can scale things, I'll use a simple,
let me get where I'm trying to go.
Okay.
When Zillow makes billions of dollars a quarter and reports billions of dollars in earnings like they used to, I don't know what they're reporting now, but 3-4 years ago, they were making billions of dollars. Off whom were they making those billions of dollars?
Oh, off of realtors. Yeah, absolutely. Their business,
which
their current model collapsed.
which
Buyers,
realtors in
right?
general? Which realtors
Buyers,
in general?
buyers
They
agents,
were
right?
charging
So
unbelievable amounts
I
of
over the
money.
years have paid Zillow. I think the most I ever signed was maybe a $9,000 contract for a zip code to buy buyer agent leads.
Right. Now, are you happy you're not currently locked in for a year or two at Zillow on buyer leads?
I'd be laughing at the guy on the phone right now.
Oh, that's a horrendous feeling right now.
Yeah.
Right. As I said in my other video, those agents got to be looking at their contracts and hoping there's some sort of force majeure, change of law clause, and that this might apply to that. At least it might in New York, actually. Now, I don't see how buyer leads are going to be worth
anything
because of the work. You still have to do
not
some
the
work,
way that
right?
they currently exist, right?
You still have to do work. There's no that excess money that was going to the national websites rather than the realtors. Like my theory is for years, the realtors have been so ripped off by, I thought it was NAR, but I don't really know, that the listing agents' work was going up the ladder, being put out on Realtor.com, and consequently, all these other portals had a right to it. Otherwise, there would have been collusion and lawsuits. That all this work that realtors were doing was going out, and then these leads were being sold back to realtors. So they were all that excess money that the greedy realtors were supposed to be going was really going, a lot of it, the excess, because that's how businesses work. Like the theory in economics is people will keep competing with your business till they get a reasonable return on money, which may be 8 or 10%. So what was happening is all these lead generation people, all the leads were sucking all that excess work over the work value out of realtors, and it was getting transferred to these national people. So yes, there are some realtors making millions. Most realtors close 4 or 5 properties a year and don't make much money at all. Most of that money, in my opinion, was going to these digital people. I think a lot of that's coming back. And if we could get NAR a car to stop our leads going out there without being compensated for it, so the intellectual property of the real estate agent, if it gets respected again and we get control of it, so frankly, if NAR goes away, I'd be happy as long as the MLS is still around. We need the MLS to compete with the Redfins and the portals. So we've got to make sure, as a realtor, you have to make sure that someone's around to get your listings out all over the internet. And for buyers, even if it's on all agent websites only, so that buyers can type in homes for sale in San Diego and my website and all your other websites, and we compete to get our website to pop up there. That would be a great model. What realtors don't need is to have billions of dollars going to Zillow and billions of dollars going to everybody who's in bed with Google so they show up in the top of the search results. That needs to go away because we're about to lose 30, 40, 50, 60% of our commissions that people are getting pissed at realtors at, but it was really going to Google and Zillow. So let's fix our industry, and I demand that CAR and NAR do that. Maybe if NAR sticks around and does that, we'll help them with their model as a group.
I couldn't, it's the one term that I agree with the plaintiff attorney Ketchum is when he calls the NAR a mafia. A lot of their practices towards us agents over the years have been absolutely,
So we're going to leave it with this.
Yeah.
Do you know for a fact if it's true? I'd love to see this in the comments, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Is it true? Because I've asked at my local associations, never got an answer, that when Realtor.com was being created, they licensed our work to Realtor.com, and then the officers for the National Association of Realtors went over to Realtor.com, and that was their business. In other words, the theory being, and this is, I'm not saying this happened.
Are you saying we were sold out, John?
Were realtors sold out by the officers at NAR when they went over to Realtor.com? Was there some self-dealing or negotiations? Like, was it kind of set up like the FDA, where or Fauci's people, where you like the group you're licensing or dealing with gives you a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden you become an officer for that company right after you retire from the federal government? I mean, is that what happened there? Is this another one of those? I used to think America wasn't a corrupt country, but it really is. Is that what we were seeing?
Is this a conspiracy theory that could be true, John?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Anyway, that's where we leave it. I'd love to get to the bottom of this with realtors. Love to have a conversation. How do they reach you, Phil, if they want to talk to you directly?
You can reach me at 480-862-6307 or shoot me an email at philmillsteam@gmail.com.
And where are you normally, though? Are you
Where am
living
I?
in Imperial Beach
I'm in
right
San
now?
Diego now.
In a
Yeah,
house that you
yeah.
renovated? And
I go
looks
back and
beautiful?
forth. San Diego, Phoenix.
Because it looks beautiful right now.
We did just move over to San Diego, so I'm in that market there. But I really don't do a tremendous amount of real estate work outside of my own properties at this point. But if you have questions, I'm always available. I'm always happy to talk to people, whether it's about a property or about a investment.
So we're gonna get you listing some properties.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm very interested to see how this shakes out and navigate through it. Just really from like a learning perspective, to see what the best way to go is. So keep watching us. John and I are going to start doing these, hopefully daily, but certainly several a week together. And John's been doing a bunch of education. Staying tuned in. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'd love to hear
That's
from
where
you.
we gotta go. And otherwise, is it gonna be what's my public facing website? I know you didn't like the name, but winnerscheck.com.
Winnerscheck.com is going to be
Okay.
public facing, right?
And then
Winnerscheck.org on the backside for
we'll have the
realtors.
materials at org. All right. Thanks, Phil. The whole time, in case people are wondering what I was thinking, I was looking at other things over here, but the whole time I was wondering, I sure hope that we didn't go over. I mean, I upgraded today to the paid version of this. I sure can hope it can record for as long as we talk. So that's the
It
moment.
still says recording, John. We'll find out.
otherwise, it was good practice. All right. Thanks. I enjoyed it. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.